Hey, it's Stage Door, a theater podcast. Just a couple of average guys hanging around the stage door in the back. Today we're talking with Rosie Best of Issue Box Theater in Toledo.
So we better just go ahead and clarify to anybody listening to this that you are clearly not from Ohio.
No, I'm from Detroit.
Detroit?
Yes.
She sounds like she's from Detroit.
Yes. No, I was told today that to be thought of as genuine, you have to say Detroit.
Oh. Down in the D or whatever they say.
Because before I was saying Detroit, and that's clearly... I'm not from Detroit because I said that. Detroit.
That because I'm not from Detroit, I didn't know to do that.
Yeah,
so
now I'm going to say I'm from Detroit.
See, I didn't know.
Yeah.
That. So where are you from, actually? Come on.
I was born at the very early age of... I was born in England to Irish parents. Yes. So, and in fact, for 10 years, I taught theatre at Toledo School for the Arts.
Right. How did that happen? How did you end up from England to Toledo School?
Well, I was going to tell you a little story about Toledo School for the Arts. So Gherky, who, is an institution in Toledo. Everybody knows Gherky, right?
Right.
He used to tell people that the woman who was auditioning kids in the next room used to put on different accents. And he didn't know what accent. He said, she tries to put on a British accent. He used to do this all the time to me. It was like, what an outrageous human being. But anyway, so I ended up in Toledo, Ohio, as a result of meeting someone at a conference in England. And I came to visit.
To visit. And then it was a church in town, and I ended up helping them understand what they needed to do in terms of their youth ministry, because at the time I was working in England with Youth for Christ. And anyway, long story short, I came over as a religious worker. Really?
Originally, yes, on an R visa. Yeah,
that's
religious
worker.
R
visa. The R is for Republican.
R is for religious worker. Yes,
so Republican.
No, I'm not one of them.
That's okay. We don't need to worry. Everybody's allowed to their own opinion here.
Yes, you're entitled to your own opinion. Yes.
So were you the original theater teacher at Toledo School for the Arts?
No.
No.
Actually, there was one who lasted, from what I understand, about 8 days.
Oh, well, that doesn't.
No, so I was not the original. There was a couple more that came before me that were part-time. And when I started, there were 3 part-time people, who taught 2 or 3 hours a day. And then I started as a graduate assistant.
Nice.
So I had graduated from the University of Toledo with my undergraduate degree in theater. And I got a graduate assistantship. So my first 2 years, I was at BGSU, and I got my Master of Arts in Teaching Theater. And my placement, instead of teaching undergrads at BGSU, I was teaching at Toledo School for the Arts.
Nice. So, and you could have been placed at any high school or any of these things. It was
no.
Oh, no. Okay.
Because I guess there were some people with some strings, and so that's how Toledo School for the Arts discovered me, and then they kind of said, what about if you go and do this? And so somehow those things happened. I don't really know. I'm not really very good at the practicality of all that stuff. But anyway, so I qualified with the ability to teach language arts as well as the ability to teach theater. And one of my first jobs was to teach them how to say it properly.
Oh.
Because Howard Walters was the principal at the time, and he used to say theater.
Oh,
yeah.
But
like Gatorade.
Yeah, but Howard and I had a very good relationship, and I used to leave Miracle Grow in his mailbox because he had a bald head.
Oh,
so I used to leave Miracle Grow in his mailbox, and he used to tell me I was Australian.
Turf was a little thin on top, so you were trying to help him out.
That's right.
Well, you're obviously Australian. That works well too.
My dad had the same haircut, and so he used to say, "You never put marble tops on cheap furniture."
Oh, what mine is, since I'm a little thin on top too. Here, in case people don't know, is I always say that God only made so many perfect heads, and then He put hair on the rest of them.
Ah,
see.
Well, I heard a new one the other day. And that was, this guy said to me, he said, "My pastor once told me it's my solar panel for my sex machine."
Oh. I don't know if I can even use that one, I'm to be honest, so.
You would have to be careful.
I don't know if I have any batteries in the shed anymore, so I'm just gonna... Hey man, you know your strengths, and eventually those go down. And you get older, and you're like, you know what? I try to lean on my personality a lot more than I used to.
There you go.
And we met Rosie. My family met Rosie when she came to see. Ooh, come on, I can do this. It's the one with Secret Garden. See,
Secret
I knew
Garden.
I'd get it eventually. It wasn't Secret Garden. You came to see the actual TSA main show, whatever the heck that show was. Oliver. It was Oliver.
Okay.
Yeah, and because my daughter was in that show, and then you turned around and just started talking, and we
That sounds like me.
yeah, and we just hit it off, and it was like, oh, look at you, and then you just offered, hey, if she's going to do this show, I'm more than happy to help her with her dialect.
Yeah.
I was like, you don't even know who I am.
Right.
But
right.
you were like, doesn't matter. You're
Well,
sitting
see,
in
I
the
like
seat
to hear
behind
it.
me.
I like to hear it done right.
Can you earn money doing that?
I have done. Yes. In fact, probably the most lucrative gig that I ever had was somebody hired me to do their outgoing voicemail message.
Oh.
And it was $60, and it ended up taking me 10 minutes to. It was a local law firm, and they wanted. I guess the guy was an Anglophile, and he wanted a British accent. So yeah, and it took me 10 minutes to record it.
10 times, that's
6 times.
Whatever that
60
hourly
would
wage
be.
But I also have recorded an audiobook
nice.
with Dreamscape Audio. They needed a British accent, and they wanted a genuine British accent rather than somebody pretending to have a British accent.
And they were fine if that person was actually Irish but lived in England. Is that what it was?
Well,
With your Irish parents?
Well, I have Irish parents, but I was born and raised in England.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have a different accent than them completely?
Yes.
That's
yes.
awesome.
My mother used to talk like this. She was like, "Will you get yourselves down here? Those wee kids on those Saracen trucks." Honestly.
I love it.
That was my mother. Whenever I tell stories about my mother, I have to use her
Of
accent.
course you do.
Know, because
why wouldn't you use that?
Exactly.
It's perfect to have.
Exactly.
If I tell stories like that about my parents, it just sound like me. Boring.
So again, why were you qualified to teach drama, musical theater?
So I had a bachelor's in theater, and I was in the process of getting my Master of Arts in Teaching Theatre. So I have an MAT, and now I'm also a licensed independent social worker with a supervision designation.
See, so there's where we want to get to. So
Yeah.
you were at TSA for like 1 or 2 years.
10.
10. See, that's what I want to
Yeah.
go from there.
Wow.
10 years in, and you said, I've had enough of Gurky. I can't, this is it. I've had enough. Right?
Yeah, so Toledo School for the Arts is an amazing environment, very creative, very vibrant, but it was also exhausting. And knowing what I know now about mental health, I can look back at the end of my time there and say I was basically burned out. I had set myself some goals
in terms of, I wanted to do a Shakespeare, I wanted to do a farce, I wanted to do a murder mystery. And I had done all of those things, and I was exhausted, and I wasn't recovering. Most people understand this now, having gone through COVID, like the year of living individually, right? So people get to the point where they don't have margins anymore, right? And so, like, if you drive anywhere right now, that people are a lot more pissed off, right?
I was just talking about running more red lights accidents on the way home. Like, this is ridiculous.
Right.
I should have taken the expressway. I took the wrong road.
Right. So people are a lot more on edge, and that's where I was. I would describe now what happened. I was in a computer lab with a group of students who were just typing up a paper, and I would say now that what happened was I had a panic attack. I kind of felt that the walls were closing in. I was like, I have got to get out of here. And pretty much I was just burned out. Different things were happening, criticisms, which may or may not have been fair, happened. And I just had no recovery strength. So my plan was that I was going to go to OSU and get my PhD. Well, the short version of the story is that didn't happen.
Right. Yeah.
And so and there's a very long circuitous story which I won't bore you with. But some discovery later, I ended up realizing that what I wanted to do, what I had been doing, in fact, was I wanted to work with people. And so I trained to become a social worker. My first class as a social worker, one of the prompts that we had to follow was bring a song that describes how you understand social work. So, this is the way I tell it. But, my friends were bringing Bridge Over Troubled Water and I'll Be Your Friend. And I don't
Wind
really know.
Beneath My Wings.
Yes. And I brought the song My Psychopharmacologist and I.
What? I don't know that one. Rob, do you know that one? What show is that from?
It is from Next to Normal.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful song. It has shades of the Sound of Music. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da. Ativan calms me when I pay the bills. These are a few of my favorite pills. And so
I need to go back and listen to that soundtrack again. How do I not know that one?
I don't know.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I might just get
dads.
stuck on that Beethoven,
We're just dads.
Mozart,
Right.
That one, I love that one.
So, and as I'm a woman of age, the Swingles, I don't know whether you know the Swingles. They were this kind of close harmony group in the 70s.
I know the Wiggles.
Yes, the Wiggles, yes.
So it's kind of got that shades of that. So I brought this in and I kind of felt the whole class go, oh?
What
like,
is this? Yeah.
Who is this crazy woman? Now, little did I realize at the time that what I was doing was establishing my first production for Issue Box Theatre.
Was that the first show you did?
That was the first show we did.
Next to Normal?
Next to Normal.
I didn't know that was the first one. I knew you did it.
Yeah.
I just didn't know that was your first one.
That was our first show.
That's a great selection.
Yeah.
When are you doing it again?
Well, it's been 5 years. 6.
Yeah.
Well, no, 6 years we've been in operation.
That's a show that doesn't get done enough. That's why I'm asking.
No. So that show, the lead character and it's because at the time it was written, she's diagnosed as being manic depressive. They no longer use that terminology anymore. They talk about people being bipolar. So my vision early on was for community partnership theatre. But community partnership theatre is a terrible title for a theatre.
Defunding the theater. I mean, what kind of title is this?
Right. So
I, was dreaming. We were thinking about, and in fact, I don't think I really came up with the name until close to when we were getting the publicity ready for the show. And I came up with the idea of issue box. So the idea of this theater would be about exploring different issues through theater.
It's a uniquely beautiful take on theater in the area, and which is why we wanted you to come in and talk about it.
Right.
And is the box part you're opening up a box, or is it the theater is small? Why the word box?
Interesting question. So we don't have a theater space. So going back to the idea of community partnership, the idea was not to enter into competition with anything that was already happening theater-wise. And so I got to step back a moment and kind of establish my premise. So a lot of theater comes under a very elitist type of engagement.
Well, you're teaching people how to say it.
Right, exactly.
I'm sorry, you're teaching people how to say it, so yeah.
Yeah.
I should probably put the microphone near my face if I'm actually going to talk.
Yeah.
Right. So, yes. So, and it's interesting because, there's so many riffs we could get onto with that, but let me try and stay focused for once in my life. So, elitist, why do I say that? So, we expect people to go to a certain building. So we expect them to have transport to get to that building. We expect them to turn up at a certain time. We expect them to turn up on time. Otherwise, we might not let them in. We expect them to have at least 2 hours free. We expect them to not need childcare because we expect them to leave their children at home. We expect them not to be working. Theater doesn't usually happen middle of the afternoon on a Tuesday. It happens the weekends, the evenings. All right, so we expect all of those things. We don't expect people, we expect them to know, right? And we communicate through channels that we use, right?
And another thing that's elitist that is different is we expect them to know when to clap.
Yes.
When not to cheer. When, hey, what are you doing? This person's
theater
not
etiquette. Theater etiquette.
Yeah, I mean,
how to
I
behave.
guess I never thought about that before because I go to dance competitions and they're hooting the person's name out on the stage, and if one of those dance moms comes to the theater and their daughter goes up there and does something and hoots, people look at them like, you are a piece of trash.
And not only that, but convention at dance concert is your kid's done, you hoof it out of there, right? So we have a lot of layers of rules and etiquette that we put on people. Well, if you've never grown up with that sensibility, right, how do you know? So let alone if you are someone who has 4 jobs that you're dashing between. You can only use the bus doesn't get to the place that you want. You've got kids, so you either bring the kids and they're noisy or whatever.
Everything you are saying is Ron and I. We are just normal dudes who don't know any of this stuff coming into this kind of thing. Right. Which, I mean, we fell in love with it, and that's why we're doing the podcast about it, but we are still very much rookies when it comes to this kind of stuff, and we'll probably screw up a bunch of times when we're our etiquette is poor.
Yeah. Well, so now let's just take it the other way. So who needs the arts? I'm asking you.
Everyone?
Right.
Right
Why?
Answer?
Why does everyone need the arts? What is it you get from the arts?
Everything that you work for. I always say this. I'm like, look, I'm working a crappy job I don't want to work, so that I can spend my time and my money outside of stuff that is all created by art. All of it is I go see the movies, I listen to music, I spend my money on going to the theater, I go on vacations in these beautiful locations that are all decorated a certain way. If arts didn't exist, what would be the point? I don't understand what the point of the world would be without art. I really don't.
Right.
Because we would just be robots going through life.
Right.
And art is everything. I try and tell people, like, that chair you're sitting on was designed by somebody. You wouldn't even be able to sit on a chair if there wasn't an artistic mind behind that.
Right.
Your house that you're sitting in was designed by somebody. I don't understand the whole political view of saying that art isn't important. Screw you. What are you talking about? Art isn't important. It's everything.
Let alone how much did Netflix gain over the COVID, right? Or let alone how many people buzz through the credits and don't pay attention to all of those people who were involved in putting on a show or whatever.
The beauty that you just watched, exactly. It's just it really is everything, and it does baffle me that people sometimes don't get that. They don't get that art is what makes everything in this world worth living. Honestly, it's like, what is going on here? Why are we, I just don't. As I say, people like what I do for a living. People are like, oh, that's a fun job, and I say, well, they need to pay me to show up every day, or I'm not showing up.
Right. So let alone, right, you said we're just two normal dudes, right? Yeah. But I would imagine, that you probably have some, look at the equipment we've got around here just to record this, right? Probably some advantages. So part of the thing about social work, right? The principle of social work is threefold: the poor, the vulnerable, and the oppressed, right? So we look out for those people, right? And so if you are thinking about areas where theatre isn't, it's not usually in the area of town where the poor, the vulnerable, and the oppressed lived, right? So what if instead of saying you have to come here at this time and do this, you take theatre to those places? Boom!
I love it.
Oh,
right?
My goodness, yes.
So at Issue Box, what we have then done is we are less known for our productions, although we have done productions, than we are for our engagement with the community. So today was the beginning of the Young Artists at Work program. And I spent today, 5 hours of today, meeting with different groups of artists in Zoom rooms, because the Young Artist at Work program is happening virtually again this year, but helping for these young people to understand principles of community engagement, principles of dignity, and helping them to understand how to go about engaging in the community as visual artists.
So they don't make, I guess, like a fool of themselves when they're in these situations. You're trying to minimize the awkwardness and the, like apprehension of them doing this kind of stuff.
Well, so tomorrow I'm going to be doing a session with them on communication. So how often do we think about communication, for example?
Never. I work in the communication industry.
About what your prejudices are, and therefore what you communicate based on your prejudices. So if you've never even thought about the fact that you start with an idea in your head that then becomes part of your speech or your typing, and you send it assuming understanding, right? But what about the barriers to that understanding, whether they be cultural, whether they be oppression, whether they be education? Those barriers get in the way, so that when that person decodes a message, right, do they understand the message in the way that it was sent, or do they understand it in the way they think about it?
You following all this, Ron?
I'm thinking. She said the word dignity,
okay,
and issues, and I want to know. So what you're talking about has to do with some of that.
Because it might be flying over my head.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm still processing it.
Yes, I'm like, there's a lot.
Listen to it a couple times.
So let's put it into a concrete example.
Please.
Yes.
Right. So my wife and I were having a conversation about a tree. Mm-hmm. We're standing in the back yard of our house, and I said to her, "I'm thinking we need to take that tree down." She says, "I agree."
Okay.
And I'm thinking that was way too easy. So I'm shortening the version of the story. I said, "Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to walk down the drive, and when we get around the corner, I want you to point to the tree you're talking about. Boom! She points to this like Charlie Brown Christmas tree, and I point to this 14-foot pine tree. And it was at that point I realized we had complete agreement on this subject without talking about the same thing. We were using similar phrases like tree, chop down, light.
But what's this have to do with what you're working with the people then?
Teaching them.
Yeah. Theater etiquette.
No.
Oh, see, I'm so far lost, I can't even keep up.
Teaching theater students to see from the person's point of view rather than their elitist point of view. They're theater snobs.
Which is what this podcast is the anti of.
Yeah,
we're not theater snobs. We actually did want to create this because it's like there's so much like elitism out there.
So, for instance, I use the phrase edutainment. So I want people to be educated as well as entertained. So a theatre production is never done on its own. So again, one of the things that social workers are all about is resources. So for instance, we will choose to do a play about an issue. Say, for instance, suicide.
Uh-huh.
We did the play Every Brilliant Thing, which is indeed a brilliant play. You know how I know this? It was written by a Brit.
Oh, of course.
But it starts off, the list began after her first attempt. So, boom, from the get-go, you know, this is somebody has attempted suicide.
May I ask
right?
how she attempted?
You may ask, but I would say go see the show.
Oh, come on.
Spoiler alert.
I know.
Well, so again,
But you already did the show.
Why would you want to know that?
I know. I have a morbid problem.
Right. But so see...
And my brain always says, you attempted, what, did you really want to commit suicide? Because if you really wanted to commit suicide, I think there's a lot of ways to actually do it. Or is this a situation where you are trying to ask for help?
So I just love that because you just threw the ball right up in the air for me to smack it down. So the first thing I want to challenge you on is the use of the word commit, right? Commit is usually attached to criminality. Okay?
Yeah, committed in prison.
Yes. So imagine if you were somebody who had a relative who had completed suicide.
Ooh.
Imagine how you would feel if somebody's always saying, what did they commit? Commit. Imagine how would you live with dignity given that experience, right? And the thing is, it's very difficult. If you have survived suicide, either of somebody in your family or you made an attempt. Now, the other thing is, so suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yes, very
right?
much so.
But at the point in which somebody makes that decision, they consider that the best thing for everybody involved is that they say exit stage right or left. Right? So in the play, Every Brilliant Thing, there is a lot of teaching about emotional dysfunction, right? It's a solo performance that involves a lot of audience interaction.
It's one person?
It's one person, yes. So I performed the play, but also Neil Powell performed the play because it's really cleverly written so that either a male or a female can perform it. But it has lines in it like, when something bad happens, your body feels it before your brain can understand what's going on. It's like a trapdoor. So imagine my delight when I find that written in a play. So in that moment, I'm not doing a therapy appointment with a client, which I am capable of doing, but I am educating a whole group of people about what the fight, flight, or freeze moment feels like. And whereas a lot of us grow up with resiliency and determination and understanding, anybody who has experienced trauma may not have all of those pieces in line, so that the process short circuits and they go, oh, I can't do this anymore.
So is that the actual goal of Issue Box? Is to, I mean, again, you're working in social services, so are you able to now reach more people with the same type, instead of going one person, one family at a time, you can maybe possibly reach several?
Yes. So social work, again, works micro, meso, macro. So micro is individuals, meso is small groups, and macro is policy, right? So this is about meso education, or psychoeducation is the term that we use if we're writing clinical notes.
And I'm mesmerized by the fact that it took somebody like you. I mean, somebody who had a theater background initially, well, religion apparently, and then theater background, who then had her own type of burnout to go into the social services, to then come back to the arts and what she loves, to produce theater that is, it's so complex. But it's so beneficial and so unique to Toledo. I mean, we don't have that. We don't have this kind of stuff. And again, I already said it once before, that's why you're here. We want to talk about what Issue Box is. Issue Box is not just a theater out there producing
Oklahoma.
Yeah, Shrek.
Great show,
I said Shrek last time. I should probably pick a different fun musical. Picking on poor Shrek, apparently. But, one of those theaters that is producing just to make big box office sales.
So for example, I've said this in a board meeting. If we do Little Shop of Horrors, it will be over my dead body. Now, why do people do Little Shop of Horrors? Because it's a crowd pleaser and it makes money. So why would I never do that show?
What's the impact socially on that kind of stuff? Like, what is it that is actually going to affect? What I would say, you have to question that every time as Issue Box. Yes. How is this affecting the community that I live in?
So the one reason I wouldn't do that show is because it glorifies domestic violence.
I was going to say the dentist is pretty bad.
Right. And people say, well, he gets eaten by the plant. Well, so does Audrey. So where is that justice? Right? So I am constantly looking. So our mission is to create space for human dignity using the arts for social justice. So
wait, say that again.
To create space for human dignity using the arts for social justice.
That sums it all up, I think.
So,
I'm going to use that in the title of the show.
Yes.
So, for instance, we did Company.
Yes.
Right? Company is about an entitled white guy who has all of these relationships with people and these couples, and he's like, I want to be married.
I want to hear why you did Company, because I want to hear this social dilemma on this. Because Company, he's a crappy guy, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on.
So we cast the best person in the room to play the role of Bobby.
Well, that's good.
The best person in the room happened to be a 28-year-old African-American woman.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Guess what? It's very interesting, the questions that get asked about why Bobby gets away with that would never be asked if Bobby's just getting away with it.
Example,
Bobby is very whiny, right? And he's kind of keeping all these women on the hook.
Right.
Right?
True.
Right?
True. He's just wants to be single and have a great time for the rest of his life.
Right, except
why is everybody else getting married?
He wants to be able to screw around and screw women around, but also get away with it. But he also wants the married life. And then he has the one woman who's sort of throwing herself at him because she's kind of pissed off at her husband, whichever number it is at the time. So, but the other thing is, Company is about friendships, a lot of it.
Oh, your wine level's good?
My wine level
All
is
right.
very good. Yeah,
So
I don't
Ron,
want
you
this
want
to
some more
turn.
wine?
I don't want this to turn into drunk theater.
Oh, I'm the only one drinking more wine, apparently. I mean, exactly. We can barely understand you as it is.
Yeah.
So.
Well, if you just learn to speak English.
Ooh, I like that. See, I've never heard that. See, once again, I'm learning so much.
Well, see, when I went to Bowling Green State University to do my Master of Arts in Teaching Theatre, there was not a certificate to teach theatre. So I had to get certified to teach language arts.
Interesting.
So I go into the class the first day and the teacher asks the question, not knowing who any of us are, what do we need to do if we're going to teach English well? And I put up my hand at the back and said in my best British accent, learn to speak it.
Yeah, be English?
She said, oh, you're going to be trouble, aren't you? I said, I do hope so.
You know what? If trouble is having a personality, then oh well. I can't, just for me, I don't know how people go through life being just as my wife says, good looking posts. They just go through coasting. It's like, how can you have a personality, for goodness sakes?
So where were we? Issues.
Oh, sorry.
So, yes, so Company was about, so I figured in on the friendships. And so one of the things about it is if anything happened to Bobby and he lost his house, he has these different relationships. He could couch surf, but he also is a man of money. So he could go to a hotel. But if his money was gone, he has all these relationships. He could crash out on the couch. And so we used Company to raise money for homelessness.
Awesome.
But we also did a collection for things, so baby toys, clothes, things like that. And we took those to Beach House. So again, social action isn't just about saying something, it's about doing something.
Right.
And theater, drama, is about to be or to do. Right? Drama comes from to do or to act, I think it was. I've forgotten my 7th and 8th grade
I would
theater
have to
lessons
believe you. Two
that
rookies.
I used
Remember,
to.
2 rookies. You could tell us anything right now, and we'd believe
I
you.
believe you. I believe you.
So we've done a play about dementia. Who did we have in? So we have talkbacks at the end of our shows.
Awesome.
Not one night of the 4. We do talkbacks at every performance.
Oh, nice. So it's
right?
not like the big thank you to the director on Sunday.
Right.
Which is a show I try to avoid.
Yeah,
because I don't want to sit there while everybody's doing that.
Right.
Come on, really.
So we did a play about dementia. So we had the Alzheimer's Association. We had a representative from Memory Lane, which is an adult day service.
What was the show, by the way?
It was a play called Remember Me,
See,
which
look, have
actually
you heard of that, Ron?
nobody will have.
That's what I mean. Is you're producing unique shows.
You know why it was a unique show? We had it written for us.
Get out of town.
No, seriously. It was one of my colleagues on the MSW program who wrote the play. He was living with his grandpa, who was 90 years old. So he was observing life there, but was also an intern in Ohio Living, working as a hospice social worker. And within the learning instrument for that, he wrote the play, Max Cleary. So, because, I started my MSW class in 2015. And then, August 2014, and and February 2015 was when we put on our first play, our musical. Now, interestingly enough, going back to that musical, one of my goals in that, so we raised money for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
And that was Next to Normal that you did.
That was
your
Next
first
to
one.
Normal.
Just remind people,
Yeah.
Next to Normal. And you had a very talented crew of people.
Yes, we did.
That you had put on
Yes,
there.
we did.
I remember some of the people that you had in that cast.
So Aaron Wiley,
Yes.
who is the center director for the Willow Center, played the role of Diane in that show. Now, one of my express goals in that was that I wanted her not to be crazy. Because here's the problem. Here's the stigma that we buy into, that mental illness is crazy. Now, why would you ever want to say, I live with mental illness, if everybody's going to say, oh, you're crazy.
You're crazy, right. No, good point.
So I live with a diagnosis of anxiety and depression, right? I'm not going to bore you with my story about how I come to that, but it's real. So for me, it is very important that we normalize and understand that mental illness or mental health issues are things that all of us can be dealing with.
And how did Erin play that then? Were you very satisfied?
She played it as a normal human being.
As a
Just
woman
because
and a mom
normal.
and exactly who that character should be.
And the thing is, the character is under undue stress. She comes to realize that she has split part of her personality because she had a baby that died. And so she is living with this dissociation of this dead baby. And in the play, you don't know that to start with. And I apologize for those who I've just created a spoiler for. But when you first meet the family, Gabe is one of the characters on stage.
Right.
And you don't realize until about just before the first act ends that Gabe is actually not real. Right. He's not. So one of the lyrics
passed.
is, he's not there. But in her mind, he has been growing up with her. So here's another principle that we live by. So when we did that, not only did we have somebody who was a counselor and understood the mental health component of what she was playing, but we also had 17, 18-year-olds playing 17, 18-year-olds.
What a novel concept.
Yeah. Right? So it wasn't a 25-year-old trying to fit themselves back into this little body and go, oh gosh, yes, I'm so distressed and disordered, right? We had a Drew Longmore, who was at Toledo School for the Arts, was fabulous and played the daughter who was just about to go to college and was dealing with all of this angst.
Who sings the song I love so much?
Which is
the Mozart song.
Yes, Mozart was crazy.
Mozart's crazy. I love that song.
Yeah.
You know, maybe because it drops an F-bomb. I don't know. There might be something wrong with me, but I enjoy that.
There's several things wrong with you,
Yes.
Kyle.
Yes.
I actually don't have time to do the diagnosis, but yeah, you're welcome.
Who played the Gabe? Who played Gabe?
Gabe was played by a guy called Greg Grimes, who was in New York for a while. I'm not sure where Greg is now. He was doing theater down at BGSU, musical theater.
Gotcha. We're all about dropping names here. We give people credit who deserve it, who worked very hard.
Henry was played by Jonathan Crawford, who was also a younger man. And then who else was in that?
Tyler Schwan.
Tyler? Yes. What? Schwanz?
Tyler Schwanz. Doctor of chiropractic, so the issue was about back pain.
Yes.
Yeah, back pain.
Yeah. He was.
Was he the dad?
He was the dad.
Oh, it's another
and then
powerful part.
Matt Richardson, who is a beautiful soul. I love Matt. He played Dr. Fine, and then Don Wachowiak at Northview Theater played the other doctor. So we split that role into two. And then we had voices that were played by Amber Wilkes. And
Amber was in that show?
Amber was in that
This is
show.
before I even knew who Amber was.
And Emma Korolewski.
Bad for me.
And I feel like there was one other person. Gosh, this is 6 years ago.
Right. Emma Korolewski's beautiful voice.
I didn't come with
Well,
studied
you
up.
really brought some studs to the show then, didn't you? Wow. Look at you with your pulling the big names in.
We raised about $5,000 for NAMI.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. So your shows...
Because we had a producer who paid for all of the upfront costs so that any money coming in... Now, this was before any of us were full-time... any of us were working for IssueBox. So we didn't have a space or anything. So we were able to give away all of our money. The only reason we changed that model is because, as somebody astutely pointed out to me, if you ever want to get grants to do your work, nobody is going to give you a grant if you're going to turn away and give your money away. Because why wouldn't they just give it to them?
Awesome point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whoever that was is very educated.
It was Celia Williamson, Dr. Celia Williamson from the University of Toledo, who runs the Human Trafficking and Social Justice Institute. Yeah, she's now, there's a woman. Yes, she was brilliant. But again, for the first 3 years, we gave all of our money away.
Well, there's worse things you could have done.
Exactly.
So, darn it, you help people out by giving them tons of money.
Right.
You're an awful person.
And even now, I will say that I will try and give them... So, like, at this moment in time, we're doing some work, and I've got some... I don't want to give away... Like, can you have me back so I can talk...
Of course. And no, that's the beauty of this podcast, is anytime you forget something... Tell me. We'll come back.
Because I want to come back and I want to talk about the thing that we're involved in right now when it's over so that I can just like lay shit out. Because there's things that I don't really want to tell you right now because it's just still happening.
Okay, so profit versus donating. How do you stay in business?
Great question.
Yeah.
If you're giving all your money away, how do you license the next show?
And so that was the thing. So early on, we had a producer who doesn't necessarily want public credit, but was saying, how much is it going to cost you to put this on? I will cover those costs. And then where is the money going to go? But I have one caveat. I don't want to see all the same people in the same configurations on the stage. This happens a lot. And I've been in Toledo now. I came in 93. So what's that? Nearly 30. Oh my God, nearly 30 years.
28 years?
28 years I've been in Toledo.
It just goes by, doesn't it?
Oh my God. So when I first arrived in Toledo, right, you either worked for the rep or you did work with the village. And if you worked with the village, you could say goodbye to your opportunities at the rep and vice versa. Now, I am so glad to see that has changed.
Right.
I didn't even know that. See, we're such rookies. We don't know these things.
Well, and I don't know whether it was an official thing, but it was kind of very clear to me early on, just reading the socio-political kind of machinations that people get into, that there was the in-group, the out-group, the up-group, the down-group, right? Well...
30 years ago, what year was that?
Well, I don't know that I got involved in theater until like 98, 99. So 5 years after I'd been here. And I went down to, I missed the auditions for the Christmas Carol. And then I got in because I called up and in my best British accent said, I'd like to know about the... Yeah. So they wanted me in the show.
You put your voice on?
Yeah.
Is that what you did?
I put my voice on.
You're sweet, happy...
Yes. Hello, I'm awfully interested in being in the Dickens Carol.
I bet you can do a pretty good American accent, too.
You know, I try to avoid that. And You know why?
Please.
Because everyone's a critic.
Oh.
Like, can you imagine? So I will do one for you. Well, so my favorite thing to say is hello.
Oh, that's
how are
terrible.
ya?
Oh, that's terrible.
But it's terrible,
It's only one
right?
word, though.
Right.
Try to do a whole sentence at least.
No.
I can't.
No.
Because
Don't lose your British accent. That is you. That's what makes you unique. We have enough Americans in America.
I know.
In the United States. I hate even saying America, we're the only America.
But can you imagine what it's like for me to go to a British show? Oh my God, it's painful.
Oh.
Yeah, it's painful because the thing is, when people do British shows, they often just learn the words.
How do you feel about watching Les Mis, which is French but with a British accent? I never understood
is this
that.
the video version with Russell Crowe?
All of them, every single version of Les Mis is they all have British accents. I'm like, it's in France. What is going on?
Yeah, well, because Cameron McIntosh wrote he did the stuff, didn't he?
I don't know. You got to tell me.
Schoenberg and McIntosh, I think, something like that.
That's just the one thing I noticed was like, shouldn't they all have French accents and not British accents? What's happening here?
Well,
I've lost. Where are we? I just totally
How do
lost.
you do? My name's Gavroche. It's like, is he French? He doesn't sound French to me. He sounds pretty Cockney.
Well, I don't know where we were, but I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, go for it.
The name Betty.
I have a name. It's not 2 assists or sweetie or honey or love.
2 assists.
Yes. So this is not how it is at Kingston. I want to be very clear about that. But I saw this friend of mine. She has since passed. Her name was Betty. She's actually Sherry Holdridge's mum. Sherry Becca Young's.
Yes, I know.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, but please always ad lib on these so people at home know what we're talking about.
So Betty, at the beginning of COVID, was in an assisted living. I'm not going to say which one, but I got incensed because I was standing in the room with Betty. It was just before COVID shut everything. And I saw these 2 people walking past the end of past her room, and it was probably shift change, and so they were probably transferring information about the residents. But she said, "This is 2 assists," and I was furious. And
I don't even know what that means.
Well, it means that 2 people are needed to lift or help. And I was like, she is not 2 assists. She is Betty. And Betty was an incredible woman, a social worker in her own right. She had lived and worked in Texas. Her daughter, Sherry Holdridge, who ran a church here for many years called The Village, who is a social justice advocate. So I was incensed by that. And then I ended up writing a piece called I Have a Name. That ended up becoming a piece that was in the I Want You to See Me piece that we did, which was short films about different things. One was about growing up Jewish. One was about sexual assault. One was about being trafficked as a child. Mine was about dementia. And again, it was basically pleading for dignity and understanding for people who are living with dementia.
Giving them voices?
Yes. So I work in some groups called the Dementia Minds. And I work in a group which has named themselves the Black Dementia Minds. They are all African Americans. One of the women, so we met in the group, we talked in the group, and then one of the goals of the facilitators, such as myself, was to spend time to write a script for the person living with dementia. So my person is actually the same age as me, 56 years old. She has been living with early onset Alzheimer's for 5 years.
Wow, already. That's
One of the other women in the group is 46.
And you gave them a voice?
beautiful.
So somebody else gave Nia her voice in terms of writing her script. That performance is going to be coming up soon. So we've been recording that piece. Athena actually does a lot of advocacy work, but what is difficult is pulling together. So I basically listened to her speak, and the script I wrote was basically all words that she had said, but I just wove together the narrative that she had expressed.
But you are already filming this? This is a recorded?
It has been filmed. It's in the process of being edited.
Wow. And
But the other group that I worked with, the men, they had the Michigan Men Dementia Minds group. They have done their performance, a piece called Lessons of Hardship and Hope. And again, so they are wanting to appeal to people. So when we think of people living with dementia, we think of them at the end stage. We don't think of the journey that they have been on, because diagnosis happens at a certain point. But before that even, you start to observe behavior change and stuff like that. And at some point, you've noticed enough behavior change that you go to the doctor. And then you're on this journey, which may be 10 years, 5 years, we don't know. But so, yes, I've been doing some work with that group.
And so this is part of a film called...
So the Michigan Men's piece was called Lessons of Hardship and Hope.
And can we find that somewhere right now? Can we see that right now?
So the way that Dementia Minds works is that they put on a performance, again, with a talkback. Oh. So you can't just go and watch the video and go, oh, okay, cool, seen it. They want to engage in dialogue with you so that you can understand them. So it's not just, oh, you get to steal my story and go, oh, cool, I know something about dementia now. Because they want to engage with you about that.
I want you to hear me, or I want you to see me. What is that then?
That was a piece that we did in response to COVID. So COVID happened. We had this platform, which was with the Human Trafficking and Social Justice Conference. Toledo is home to that conference every year. I think they have now done that maybe 17 or 18 years. It's the largest human trafficking conference internationally.
Have you ever heard of it, Ron?
Toledo's a bad place.
No.
For trafficking.
Have you heard of this conference?
No. But
that's ridiculous. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yes. And it's in Toledo.
Right. So the first year we did a show, we did Remember Me that was written for us. The second year we did a show about gun violence in collaboration with the, it was an anti-gun violence group. The third year we did Every Brilliant Thing, which was the suicide piece.
Right.
And then last year, so it was our fourth year, we have this platform to do a show, but we couldn't do a show. So we created this piece, and it was made up of 7 individual pieces about different aspects. Brilliant piece. It's on Vimeo. You can actually get it.
Well, that's good. That's good. People need to be able to see what you are producing out there. So the fact that you're doing this and putting it out there for people to see at this point is also a good thing. But we don't want to discourage people from going and seeing this and helping these causes.
One of the things I would say about that is that I think it's online for like $15. Now, you might say, why do you need to charge $15? I can go to the movie theater and see a film for $10. Well, yeah, but that movie relies on the fact that millions of people will come and pay $10, right? Now, the other thing is that people who pay $15, some of that money is going to the individual storytellers. Because we do not want to abuse anyone and say, we own your story now. So we take the story, but we're using our platform to raise up marginalized voices.
So so tell me why people need to come see an Issue Box show.
So I would say that you are going to be moved by a show that we do. You might end up at that show because, like, for instance, suicide has touched your life or dementia has touched your life. You're not just going to walk out of that show feeling like, oh my God, you've just touched all my guitar strings. You are going to walk out of that show with resources in hand So, for instance, our talk back for the dementia show, I mean, we usually maybe 20 minutes, people are saying, oh, I want to know about, how do I talk to my sister? Because I think I'm seeing this. We had a dementia educator there who said, okay, so here's some things you can do. But then they went a step further and said, here's my card. If you need to talk about this further, give me a call. One night, I remember our talk back, it feels like it went for 45 minutes to an hour because there were a group of people in that audience that really needed some very specific intervention answers. And we had experts. That expert wasn't me, but we had experts there. And I do meet people now who say, oh, and unfortunately, because I'm usually kind of pretty sort of worn out by the end of the show, I don't remember everyone I see. But I've got to tell you that there are people who, if they come to a show that touches a subject that they are sensitive to, they're not going to forget that show because they may have got some answers or some help or some hope through that. That's if they're coming to a show. But I got to tell you, it's not just about the shows. There are people in this town who've been trafficked. There are people in this town who are trying to live sober. There are people in this town right now who are involved in the juvenile justice system, who have learned a little bit of something about themselves because of the intervention of an issue box theater person. That's the difference that I want to see made through theater. And that's why we encourage people, in my crazy kind of way, to see themselves not just as actors, but as activists. Because that, the art isn't just about changing the way you view something. It's about then taking on the mission to change it for other people. Ennobling the possibility that the arts can move you, your heart, your soul to make change in the world. And that's what we need.
Thank you for coming in. This is why you came in. This is why we had you come in. That's why we wanted to talk about it.
Right there, yes.
And thank you for coming in.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. This has been my pleasure.